So you want to know all about core training and how to breathe when you're exercising. Well, in today's video, we are taking a deep dive into both of those topics, and we're introducing our brand new resident guest, Dr. Phil. He's going to hate me for saying that. All that and more coming up right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister, that's my brother Yani Burmeister, and that's our friend Phil.
Don't worry about his name, yeah.
It's White, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil White.
You've known me for 6 years, come on.
Fuck, man, I haven't introduced you on the show before, though. Anyway, that's our friend Phil White, and we are Yani and I are the co-founders of Unity Gym and the co-creators of the UMS, the Unified Movement System, and Phil is our new, drumroll please, resident physiotherapist and sports massage therapist. Yani and I have been friends with Phil for probably about 7 years now.
Yeah,
7 years?
2012 and 2013.
Yeah.
2013.
And in that time, honestly, Yani and I go through a lot of massage therapists when Phil's been away on his studies, because he's been studying the whole time. He's just finished a master's degree in physiotherapy.
Yep, yeah, the Doctor of Physio.
Doctor of Physiotherapy,
which is an extended master's.
Which is why we call him Dr. Phil, even though apparently he's not
technically not correct.
We'll explain that in a sec, yeah.
But yeah, and we're here today. I almost laughed when I heard Yani say we're going to talk about how to breathe when you exercise, because it just sounds so funny to me.
Listen.
But we've had questions of people asking us how to breathe when you exercise. In through the nose and out through the mouth is one way. As long as you inhale and exhale.
Before we make jokes, we're going to talk about the seriousness of this topic.
Yeah, because if you don't
But
breathe,
before
you're
we
in
do
trouble.
that, I want to just apologise for Rad. He's just come out of putting out fires, and he was very stressed right before this, and his brain, because of the increase in cortisol, is operating at about 40% of his full capacity. So whilst he's quite dumb, excuse him, okay? And we'll get on with the show while he figures himself out. Now, as Rad said, we have had some really good questions come in about this, and I'm going to give a couple of shout outs here because I love it when you guys ask questions. First one is from Zahid, and he's actually a part of our tribe, and awesome, Zahid, welcome to the tribe. He's doing some of our flexibility programs, and he's just asked a question about breathing technique during exercise and in general, and it's quite a debatable topic. You know, when you're taught as a personal trainer to cue people, you're taught to cue them to breathe, inhale and exhale as they're performing repetitions of an exercise. But what I've come to learn, and we may have differing opinions, which is so cool, why I'm so excited to add Phil to the panel, because I don't know, we might have varying opinions on things, but I also know that Phil's done a lot of exercise training. He's trained at an elite level. He's represented Australia in Frisbee, which until I met Phil,
settle down.
Until I met Phil, I didn't even realise how serious Frisbee is, but it's
Ultimate
big.
Frisbee.
And Ultimate Frisbee, that's right. And we have a big American audience, and Ultimate Frisbee is pretty big in America. So anyway, Phil is...
Phil competed at a very high level, and...
he's a beast.
And trained with some of the strongest people in Australia as well. He did a lot of training with Australian strength coach Sebastian Oreb, so...
That's exactly
knows
right.
his
Learn a
stuff.
lot.
And he's had to massage Sebastian Oreb as well, which is something that I just go, whoa.
Morning, Quack.
It's kind of like putting your elbow into an overinflated basketball.
That's
how
right.
to explain it.
And that's just one shoulder. Yeah. So anyway, back to Zahid's question. And we'll dive into this, and we're also going to dive into.
Have you read the question yet?
I have, yeah. It's just about breathing technique. He's gone quite deep here. I'm not going to read the whole thing out. Okay. The other one we've got in.
So why don't we answer that question before we go to the second question?
Well, this one is in alignment, and this is going to steer the show, you know. The other one is from Bob, and Bob was wondering why we don't do shows on core activation. And the reason why I tie this together is because colloquially we name the core, I don't know if that's the right word to use, the deep core muscles, the diaphragm is one of them, and the diaphragm, of course, is what's controlling our inhale and our lungs. So what we should talk about today's both core activation stuff, why we don't do shows on specific core activation, and I'm really excited to have Phil on the discussion for this because one of the theories as to why we don't do core activation exercise a lot and why we don't talk about it a lot is very much aligns with stuff that I've heard Phil say in the past in regards to training the body as systems rather than compartments. And Rad and I, we beat that drum until it breaks, that the body should not be compartmentalized. The caveat to that argument is when you have sustained a very serious trauma and you are relearning how to use parts of the body, then there's a time and a place to sort of compartmentalize and isolate the body. But in most cases, you train the body, as a system in movement, and the core is a very big part of that. So first of all,
this is where I'm just going to jump in with my disclaimer. As a physio, you're probably going to get a bit frustrated because I'm going to say it depends a lot, because with all things, it really depends on the person, and so it's important to keep in mind that when we're discussing people here, it's going to be healthy population, don't have any sort of recent traumatic injuries. Things to keep in mind for when you think about the core is if there's it might be different advice if you've just recently gone through a surgery, an abdominal surgery, pregnant women, and women have had C-sections or some other issues.
I just realised how much less trouble we're going to get in now having Phil on the show.
Yeah, because I'm going to get in trouble. It's going
But having someone like him, to when we're saying a whole bunch of bullshit, to just step in and go, hang on a minute, it's actually a bit more like this. We're going to get in so much less trouble.
I know.
It's so good.
I know. But this is why I say, and I've put everything that Phil just said there, I put in a blanket term of trauma. And I know having a child is not trauma, but what it does to your abdominals and your core muscles could be categorized as that. It changes them. It puts them out of whack, and it stretches them and elongates tendons and all sorts of stuff.
Sometimes, rectus diaphysis is where your abdominals actually sit apart. And with cesarean sections as well. So
that's right.
Can any of our viewers quickly, because I can see Richard's written a few things up there that nobody has responded to. Richard's asking you guys, what's the sound like? Are we all okay? Because we're using a totally new sound setup for the first time. We've all got lapel mics. So Kwok and Karina, can you just let us know, is everyone sounding just as loud as each other? Is it all coming through good?
Yeah, we had to use a splitter for Rad and I, so we want to know if Phil is not too much louder than us or if it's all nice and it sounds good. So someone please chime in. I can see you all there, and we're going to call you out, Kwok and Karina.
And hit the like button. I noticed we've got a bunch of viewers that haven't hit the like button.
Yeah, smash up the like button. The like button actually helps with the algorithm, and it means that YouTube sends the video link out to more people, and you know that we share good stuff, so we want to share it and we want to get it out there. So help us out.
We don't have to hang on that for too long.
Okay, so let's dive in. First of all, I want to talk about breathing, and then because the core is that's a rabbit hole that we're going to dive down. But breathing, there are two ways that first and foremost, breathing is really important. And what Rad said before, if you're stuffing up the inhale and exhale part of it, you've got big problems because you're not going to survive.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I've got friends who, when I can hear them breathing when I'm sitting close, their breathing is horrible. They're constantly holding their breath, just in a conversation. Like, I have conversations with friends where you hear them go while they're just sitting there like that, and that is bad, man. Like, you need to, if you do need to be breathing just naturally in a way that your upper body, that your shoulders and your neck is relaxed. You shouldn't be breathing in a way that holds tension here, and that's why.
Phil maybe you can elaborate on this, but the parasympathetic systems in the body can affect, and stress mechanisms can affect your breathing. And a lot of people, there's the talk about deep diaphragmatic breathing and upper, like using the scalenes and all the neck muscles and things like that, which obviously is associated with stress and things like that.
Yeah, certainly. I think what I'd start with is that before you mentioned the diaphragm being your major breathing muscle, that's definitely true. But you got to realize that the breath comes from, it's not like you have a vacuum in your lungs that's pulling air. Like, it's not like you have the lung itself drawing air in. It's your lung is attached to the rib cage. And so whatever your rib cage is doing, that's what causes the vacuum to suck air in. Yep. So the lung's an inert structure that's just being controlled by how the ribs are attaching to it. So so for all the muscles that attach to your ribs, so your pec muscles even, they're going to be accessory breathing muscles. So you've got the diaphragm being the big one that pulls down from the bottom of your rib cage, but
Yep.
then you've also got all the muscles, so the scalenes are some of the neck muscles, you've got your pec muscles, and pretty much anything that is on the thorax is going to affect.
Yep.
But yeah, pec major being a big one.
Yep.
So
and so that,
They pec major, I
that
didn't know that.
yeah.
touches to the sternum there. So that's why when you see people who are they're tired and they're maybe just like done a big running race or something, they're really out of breath, they'll put their arms on their legs because that means that this is going to now become the stable point, and your muscles are going to be able to lift the chest by drawing in through there. So your subconscious is good at figuring out ways of getting that like more expansion through the lungs. But the issue is that when people start to become a bit more sedentary, a bit more hunched at work, and they're like this all the time, then suddenly you've got these these muscle systems that are really exactly right, and hunched shoulders, tight neck. It's all gonna.
So let's dive deeper into that because it's obviously someone's saying it's a little low. Have you seen that? Yep. Thank you very much for chiming in, guys. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into that because obviously that makes you start to think, okay, so what can compromise breathing? If you're because so many of us have kyphotic posture, desk workers, sedentary workers, people that aren't regularly opening up the pecs and things like that. So that's obviously going to cause major restriction or compromise in the ability to breathe properly, right?
Yeah. So I guess the things to keep in mind is if you're thinking, as you're sitting around doing regular work, day-to-day stuff versus what you're doing in exercise. So in your day-to-day, like I've definitely found when I was finishing off my thesis at the end of my degree, I'd get to the end of the day and I'd just be shallow breathing, stressed, and that's one thing. But then, which is not going to be an ideal way to be spending your day, certainly. Yep. But when that can translate to when you're then doing exercise. If you're really tight through those muscles, your shoulders are hunched, it does inhibit those muscles to do their accessory breathing role as well as their functional role. So I think that kind of postural piece is really important.
So flexibility and posture, we've just given you another reason to focus on flexibility and posture. It's not just about performance in lifting and function in movement. It's also about breathing, which is a very important thing. 100%. And this is something that someone like Rad and I take for granted because we're just perfect. But I joke, we're far from. But we don't have those compromises, So let's bring this into how it affects training. Rad, fairly recently, within the last few years, I've introduced Rad to Valsalvic breathing, which is how we brace. Big, deep breath, fill the chest with air, get it all tight and stable, create as much tension through things like the diaphragm and all the muscles associated with the thorax so that we're rigid, and that helps to stabilize the spine. Rad can share his examples of the differences between Valsalvic breathing, and then you can talk about the science behind it.
Sure.
Sorry, the differences between?
Well, you've only started Valsalvic breathing the last few years because you've started to lift heavy.
Massive difference.
So talk about the difference in bench pressing. Big, deep breath, hold your breath.
Well, you get the action of breathing is going through, like if you take a breath in and a breath out, you go through a phase of tension and relaxation. So when you're, when you're lifting heavy, when we're talking heavy, we're talking 90% of 1 RM or more. Like you're talking the tiniest changes and adjustments in your body can mean the difference between getting 3 reps or getting 2 reps.
Yep.
And when you're training at that level, getting that 3rd rep in every set, it makes all the difference. That's what creates the results.
Yep.
So every single thing that you can do in order to get that 3rd rep is really important. And so my experience of it, I was doing the old school, hold your breath, breathe out, breathe in, do a rep, breathe out, like this. And then when you taught me how to do the Valsalvic breathing, where now I'm working on trying to do sets of 5 reps without taking a breath, I'm way stronger.
Yeah.
Way stronger than I normally am.
Yeah.
But I've also done a very different form of breathing, which is through Kung Fu, which most people wouldn't have done, which is where you are working at quite a high intensity and you're going through very explosive movements through your limbs where you're punching and kicking and jumping, and you're taught to breathe completely naturally. You're taught to not hold your breath at all, not focus on any, because the idea in martial arts is to be able to it's like if you do a fight, it lasts for a long time, and you need to maintain steady, constant rhythmic breathing whilst you're still.
You've got to maximise anaerobic efficiency.
That's right, but then that also ties in with there's certain times where you have to create tension when you hit so it's pretty amazing.
For the specificity today, for today's sake, we're talking about strength training because
we won't talk about muscles.
I was a boxer too, and you're in serious trouble if you hold your breath boxing. But like even for a moment, it can completely.
Be a whole new sport.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and Phil's a triathlete, and so he will be able to back up the importance of breathing.
That'd be the same thing, right? You just try to focus on natural rhythmic breathing.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. You're not going to last very long if you're
holding your breath
on your first swim leg and you're like, I've got to get as much power in this one stroke. Like,
But
sure you might.
On the same token, you've trained with Sebastian Orb, who is arguably one of the best powerlifting coaches in the world.
100%.
Tell us your experiences, and I'm sure he would have had you Valsalvic breathing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It was sort of an interesting. Actually, I'm just going to umbrella all of this with it's really important to understand specificity again. So with everything, it depends. So with we're trying to hone in on just strength training here, looking at sort of rep ranges that are probably within 12, I guess. Which is going to be a very different kind of approach to different sports and different daily activities. So it's when you're looking at those higher weights. The reason why Valsalvic maneuvers can be really effective is because you're providing just that that tension that means that, similar to how I was explaining with the when you're breathing heavy and you're locking in one arm, your body really likes to have really stable positions, so like a stable point, so then the muscles can work and be a moving point. So with that breath, when you're expanding, did we actually explain exactly what a Valsalva maneuver was?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So
it.
So when the Valsalva maneuver is basically you're taking a deep breath in and then you're closing off your windpipe basically from the inside. So and holding on nice and tight. And so what that's doing is providing intra-abdominal pressure. So that's pressure inside in your lungs that pushes against all the structures that keep your abdominals and your chest intact. Yep. So what that does is it means that all those muscles are now contracting, and they've got some a bit more inherent sort of stiffness, and it will also other effects like the hydraulic amplifier effect, where basically when you're pushing out against a this is probably going way too deep science, but basically it's providing more stiffness through those muscles, which will support the skeleton more. Okay, so so if you think about your back, if you had no muscles around there, then it's not gonna do much. But if you've got nice strong muscles that are holding your spine in place, then it's amazing what the movements and how much load you can put through your spine. Yeah. So the Valsalva move is just meaning that you're getting that stiffness through the back, through all the muscles around it, and you're doing it for very targeted sort of amounts of time, so for very discrete movements. So that's like just a bench press. It's really good to hold your breath, push, and back down.
Yeah.
Now that's not going to work so much if you're trying to do something like boxing, playing beach volleyball, anything where you need all this movement. So it's a great way to train in the gym, but that doesn't mean that you should be afraid of some instability when you're doing more sport-specific movements.
Yeah.
Your body's really good at supporting itself, and I think that's where the real issue comes in, and probably why you're getting so many questions about this is that I guess people go to a physio or they go to the gym and they think, oh, I've got to train my core. And they kind of there's this idea that the spine is this really unstable thing, and they've got to do these really specific little exercises to strengthen it up. But I think that's sort of doing the body a bit of a disservice, really.
Yeah. Well, why don't we transition into the core now? Because I couldn't agree with that more. I think, and I'm so happy that we've now got you on the show, because we've got a credible source. We've got somebody that is has a university degree in this stuff and has studied it. Whereas
just a disclaimer on that. I mean, I've spent the last 7 years pretty much full time at uni.
Yep.
And as you learn more and more, you just realize that there's still so much more to learn. So I'm still on the journey of learning all of this.
Of course,
and
we all are. We all are.
You know,
but if anybody, so if anybody does want to know, Phil did a master's degree in exercise sports science.
Yeah, I started with a massage diploma for a year, then I did an exercise and sports science degree, and then I went on to do my doctor of physiotherapy, which is a 3-year extended master's. So.
And the reason why we've said this a lot, if you've ever seen our show and when we refer to seeing a physio, we always say go to see a physio that's got skin in the game. And what we mean by that is someone that actually uses the body themselves, that doesn't just have all the textbook knowledge, but that actually gets out and uses their body. And that's one of the things that we love about Phil so much. He's done a lot of work.
Just quickly, guys, we are going to get to all of your questions and comments in a moment. We've got a lot coming through, and that's freaking awesome. We love it, and we love the interaction. I just want to cover the 2 questions that we've got here that we're talking about now, and the next one is about the core training. And this is when I first started as a personal trainer back in 2004, my first 2 years of extra study outside of the courses that I did and the diploma that I did was with Paul Chek. And Paul Chek's first 3 prerequisites for his exercise coach is scientific core conditioning, scientific back conditioning, and scientific programming. And both the core and the back conditioning were very deep dives into the concept of core training and what he sort of labels the core as the multifidus, the transverse abdominis, the pelvic floor, and the diaphragm. Which is fairly common. My argument is that the core, when you look at the body, and this is something that I got a very brief idea of when I did the first 3 modules of a massage diploma and never finished it. Phil's done this and far more. When you look at an actual body, a Godiva, a body that had the skin peeled back, there is really no distinction or very little distinction between each muscle body. It all sort of just meshes together. And so my argument was how can you compartmentalize the core? It's a part of much bigger systems in the body. To me, the rotator cuff is part of the core, the deep stabilizer muscles are all part of the core. But we'll talk about the core as what people understand it, which is that pelvic floor, diaphragm, multifidus, and
transverse abdominis.
Transverse abdominis. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. In our opinion, and I'll just start with our opinion, and then Rad can elaborate and Phil can finish off with what he's learned. The core is definitely relevant. Basic core training is definitely relevant in extreme cases where you've had quite a severe injury, you've suffered trauma to the back, to the spine, you've had surgical intervention that's had to go through the abdominals. Usually when a muscle is damaged, when you have a surgical intervention through slicing it up, it goes through a real process of having to relearn how to do its job. And my understanding is that there is a need for core training in those examples.
Yeah,
and
I'd agree with that. I think the way that you've got to see all of this is that kind of training is part of the progression into more training, more
That's
complex
right.
movements. So it's basically these exercises are the most stripped back of movements. That's what I love so much about the system that you guys have is that you've got these kind of goal movements, really complicated movements like a muscle up, a snatch, but you've got a progression and a regression for every exercise to get you to those. So if you keep going the regression, so a more simple version of the exercise that you're doing, and you keep going back and you keep going back and you keep going back, you're pretty much going to end up at this kind of core training.
Yep.
And so I think it's important to think in that rehab setting where you've got someone who's got, had the rectus diastasis or the C-section that, sure, they're starting out with maybe just simple activation because that's all they can manage at that time. But, that doesn't condemn them to a lifetime of core training. It's the first step to getting back to doing more complex exercise.
And it can be for a lot shorter than what a lot of people think it needs to be. When I had my shoulder injury, the first couple of things that I was doing were scapular stabilization activation exercises, but that was for a very short period of time, and then I moved on.
So it's the same rehab principles. I think people kind of get this thing about the core and the back that you have to be super protective about it, and it's when you're teaching it like this TA activation, I've done a lot of study and we had really good instructors, but I found it really complicated and hard. So I think I think people can really get stuck on it being this mystical thing that once you achieve that, then all of your pain will be be gone. But it ends up causing, like, there's, you know, it's kind of funny when they're teaching us in uni now, where it's like they see that there's a place for it, but it often has led to people kind of having more problems than it's end up solving, because they become hyper vigilant. So they're constantly thinking about, oh, I need to brace against everything, when really, as you're talking about...
And you see people that do that kind of stuff for years.
Oh, yeah.
You see people that years later, they're still on their hands and knees on the floor, or laying on their back doing this core activation, and you're like, man...
Well, this is... And let's just dive in quickly, because...
we are going to run out of time.
We're going to run out of time. This is where progressive overload comes into play, people. And as Phil's made abundantly clear, and as I have too, there is a time and a place for specific, isolated, lying on the floor, TA activation, palpating and feeling to make sure that it's switching on. We even got taught how to dig our fingers into someone's lower back and feel the multifidus activating, which is highly debatable. You know, you have to progressively overload, and there comes a time and a place where the best core exercise for you will be something like a barbell deadlift, or a single leg deadlift, or a standing good morning,
or going for a run. Like, it's you know, it's all about getting to the best exercise is the exercise that you want to do and that you're going to do forever. You know, that might change throughout your life, but you've got to be figuring out how you get to that stage. So if you get stuck just, you know, going and being told that you have to do core exercise before you can do anything else, and you're going to end up, like, you know, going to play computer games or read your book for the rest of your life, because it's so boring. And I mean, that's not to say, like, with Pilates is a good way of kind of getting it, like, in group settings, in, you know, it's a bit more advanced, so like that kind of thing, people can really enjoy it, and if you like doing that, then go for your life. But I think that we've just got to get past that, you know, being stuck and you're not allowed to do anything else until... From my personal experience, like, I have had back issues, you know, a lot of my life, and I remember going through this sort of core activation thing, and I didn't get it, and I got sick of it, and so I just went back to doing what I wanted to do, and then I forgot about my back pain, and then
it's gone. And this is something that we should really address. There's a problem with people catastrophizing their bodies and making things really bad. And Phil has touched on this in conversations before, but there's a very big part of pain management is psychology. And if you're told that you have to think about activating your core before you take a step or before you do anything, it really messes with your psychology. The thing is, the body is amazing at bracing, and we've said this earlier. Your body, your core, those deep muscles that we're talking about that stabilize the spine, switch on, but like, even if I grip and tighten my grip, they switch on and activate. It's just a mechanism in the body that's designed to stabilize. You're not as vulnerable as you think you are. I know what it's like when you sustain a really serious injury. It's scary, and it's very easy to be influenced by physical therapists who will suggest that your problem is that you're not activating your core, but in most cases it's not the case, and you need to understand that what you're told and how you're influenced and how you think plays a very big role in your pain management. And
pain science is massive, and I could talk all day on that, but we won't do that today, obviously. We'll get but
we can talk about it. Now let's get through some of these questions. Do you have anything else to add? Okay, one last thing. Do you have to activate your core when you lift a barbell?
I mean, it's going to do it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, good. This is all I wanted to get, okay? And we're going to talk tomorrow again about belts and how to brace and all that sort of stuff. You add your final comment, and then we'll rip through some of these comments and questions.
I was just going to say, in my experience, and I've had a lot of problems with my back, and I've been to people that told me I needed to lay on the ground and stick my fingers in my TVA and abs and activate it, and it did nothing for me. I didn't get anything out of it, and I did a lot of it. And what I found was the best thing was analysing my posture, figuring out which muscles were tight and which muscles were weak that were causing my bad posture, which is mostly in my shoulders and in my pelvis, addressing those length tension discrepancy issues, and then just thinking about moving with good posture, and then everything seems to...
I'm just going to flag the word posture there, because I think that, like, there's so much about, I guess, good and bad posture that is maybe a bit misunderstood and poorly communicated, and I think that can be another topic we can maybe go into another time. But certainly there are going to be positions which, you know, are going to be...
Did we lose the camera?
It's back on.
Oh, it's back on. Okay, yeah.
So there are going to be positions that are...
just zoom in a bit.
Postures that are going to make things, you know, better while you're lifting, and I think, like, all the work I've done with you guys and with Sebastian Orob, Australian strength coach, like there's definitely, when you asked about should I brace before I do it, then like there are definitely techniques to lifting weights, and I think you should, you know, find the best coach that you can and follow those techniques. But yeah, I think just with the core activations with your TA and that real specificity, I think, is where people get a bit off the mark.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I heard it explained pretty well as like if you were, you know, you were trying to like play a musical instrument, and instead of, you know, trying to play the piece, you would spend the whole time thinking about your, you know, your flexor profundus, which is a little muscle in your forearm. So it's like when you're honing in on this one part of a much bigger picture, and if you just go and play the music, then you're gonna do better than just trying to control this little.
Sure.
That's really great. Okay, Kwok, thank you very much, brother. It's good to be back. I'm actually in building attire here. This is what I'm building in. We're doing a lot of work out there, and we've got another couple of weeks to go, but it's all going to be finished this month, so we'll be back full steam next month. I will try and jump in on these shows, though, as much as I can. Karina, morning. Great to see Yani back. Woo, thank you.
I've read all of those. There's no questions.
Okay,
There.
all right.
Questions.
Through, maybe it was just me. Okay.
The only question really is Karina's added a few comments in there, but it's from Kwok at the end. What method of breathing would you use for a deadlift and a squat, Valsalva?
Yeah, absolute Valsalvic breathing. You want to fill your chest and lungs with as much air as possible, and then hold, perform your reps. Now, you can train the Valsalvic maneuver like anything, and you get more efficient. You get more volumetric efficiency in your lungs and how it all works. I can do 20 reps. I got up to being able to do 20 comfortable heavy reps with one breath. And that was just experimenting, not a deadlift, an overhead press or a bench press.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at your upper body exercises, generally it's a bit easier to do multiple in one breath. That's what I've found. But if you're starting to look at deadlifts and squats, then that can be a bit more challenging. Yeah, and I think like the good thing about squats and deadlifts especially is you have kind of time to reset, and you're not going to be totally out of position. I think with deadlifts and squats, I don't know about you guys, but I'd go one at a time and
I do
reset.
One breath for one.
I do 1 or 2 reps for a heavy squat, and deadlift always one at a time, because deadlift, every time the bar touches the floor, I'm a big believer in resetting, because if the bar hits the ground hard, it can what do you call it? It can move the shoulders and move your scapula, and you want to have everything set like that.
20 fast reps. I've seen him do a Kwok. It's very fast. It's not like he's doing 20 slow controlled reps.
Karina, the exhale is like that breath of relief. It's a habit of breathing that permeates life as well as training. Look, there's no doubt, Karina, that breathing is very, very important, and learning to breathe deep and diaphragmatic breathing. They talk about in yoga and things like that.
Breathing where that's all they teach you to do.
It's really important, and there are major benefits to it, you know. But when it comes to training, I think people overthink and overcomplicate things. People like to overthink and overcomplicate things, you know, because there's big money in complicated.
Man, we do too. You know, we're re-releasing the Unify Movement System pretty soon, and it's not going to change anything for any of you that have already got it. You'll have both versions, but the newer version is a simplified version of what we've currently got, because what we've realised is that we've made it too complicated, and we need to make it simpler, because simpler gets better results.
Yeah,
100%.
But the thing, I'm going to finish on this, and we can all finish on a final comment. My final comment is I dislike what core training has done to the fitness industry. I think that it has created this, I think it's done a disservice to people, because people freak out. And I'm one of them. I had a spinal fracture, and my back was really, really in a bad way. And I spent many, many years, that's why I went down the Paul Chek method, because he seemed to be the back guy. And I spent many years lying on the floor with a blood cuff monitor, checking my TA activation, and then trying to stand up and do that, and doing really gentle cable pressing movements to make sure that my core was still active. And I wasted 6 years doing that stuff, and it really did nothing. And you know what fixed my back? Snatch grip deficit deadlifts from a podium when I worked with Charles Poliquin, the late Charles Poliquin, and Sebastian Oreb. That had the biggest and most profound effect on my back, and it was the one thing that I thought would ruin it. Yeah. So, that's an extreme example of not catastrophizing your body and just getting on with training it as a system, as a body.
Is that a closing thought or a closing chapter?
Yeah, it's a closing chapter.
I'd have one definite thought that if you have been seeing a physio and they've given you these exercises,
and leave them and come and see.
No, I don't think so. Like, I'd say
I'm kidding, physios.
If they've explained how it's part of a bigger picture to get you back to doing exactly what you want to be doing, and they have a clear path for how you're going to do that, by all means, keep going with it.
Yeah.
But if they haven't explained it and they've just got you saying that you're not going to be able to do anything until you have magically switched on your core, I'd say go back to the physio. Well, go back to them and press them a bit. Like, ask them, okay, what's the next step? What's the step after that? How am I going to get back to doing what I want to do? And I guess if they don't have any satisfying answers, then maybe look elsewhere.
I'll add to that. Don't ever leave your physio or doctor because of something we say here, but by all means use it as influence, talking points to ask questions and ask the right questions. You know, we're certainly not telling you to not seek advice from your physio because they're usually very smart people. Rad, closing comment.
We live in a society that wraps themselves in cotton wool. And we need to get out of it because people there's just too much rubbish about people being so fearful of their back going out because they had a bulging disc once and it's caused them pain. And they're real problems. They're things you have to deal with. But you have to look at your body from a whole. Our bodies are designed to thrive. They're designed to be strong. They're designed to be able to move things and lift things and run and jump and thrive. And we've created this environment that just shreds us. And the answer is not to avoid good exercise that makes you stronger. The answer is to look at your life from a holistic standpoint. Look at the things you're eating, look at the sleep that you get in, look at the toxins you're putting in your body, and start working daily on making yourself better in a progressive way, which might be starting on the floor, doing core activation and then working your way up. It might be, but do something and don't wrap yourself in cotton wool.
Awesome, guys. Tomorrow we're going to show you how to avoid that cotton rule. We're going to take you out on the gym floor. We're going to demonstrate some stuff. We're going to continue this great discussion. Now, if you want to work with us, the best way to do so is to click the link in here. Grab yourself a 30-day free trial of our UMS online coaching program. You'll be in our inner circle. And otherwise, if you want to just find out a little bit more about flexibility, there's a link at the top for our flexibility blueprint. They are 7 of the biggest breakthroughs that we've had over the last 20 years in our own training. Until tomorrow, guys, peace.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.